Hey guys, let's get more news about Dallas, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Cowboys expected to hire Mike Zimmer as defensive coordinator. The Cowboys looked at a number of candidates to replace Dan Quinn at defensive coordinator, and they've finally settled on their choice. According to NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, the Cowboys are expected to hire Mike Zimmer as their defensive coordinator. Per Michael Gelkin of the Dallas Morning News, there are some logistics to be completed, but Zimmer is the choice for the job. Since he was fired as Vikings head coach following the 2021 campaign, Zimmer has been away from the NFL. He had a brief stint as a consultant at Jackson State in 2022, and it was assumed that the veteran coach would eventually look to return to the big leagues. Ultimately, he'll land with the organization that gave him his first NFL gig back in 1994. Zimmer started as a defensive assistant in Dallas, but it only took him a year before he earned a promotion to defensive backs coach. He earned a promotion to defensive coordinator when Dave Campo took over as head coach in 2000, and he stuck around the organization when the Cowboys pivoted to Bill Parcells in 2003. After more than a decade in Dallas, he had a one-year stint as the Falcons' defensive coordinator before moving to the Bengals, where he'd serve as the DC for the next 6 years. Thanks to his defensive track record, Zimmer was named the Vikings head coach in 2014. He ended up spending 8 seasons in Minnesota, guiding the Vikings to 3 playoff appearances. This included a 2017 campaign where the Vikings went 13-3 in the regular season before falling to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. While the wheels never completely fell off in Minnesota, the Vikings went 15-18 between the 2020 and 2021 seasons. He was fired following that 2021 campaign, ending his Vikings tenure with a 72-56-1 record. The Cowboys' job was certainly an enticing opportunity for Zimmer as he looked to return to the NFL. Dallas finished in the top 7 in scoring defense during each of Quinn's 3 seasons calling plays, and the unit had perhaps their most productive season in 2023. The Cowboys' defense finished this past season having allowed the 5th fewest yards and 5th fewest points in the NFL. While Quinn turned down previous head coaching opportunities, he left the Cowboys for the Commanders earlier this month. The Cowboys quickly looked to replace their departed coach. The team considered a number of inside candidates for promotions, including defensive line coach Aiden Durd, cornerbacks coach Al Harris, and defensive backs coach Joe Witt, who ended up joining Quinn as the DC in Washington. In addition to Zimmer, the outside candidates included Jets safeties coach Marquand Manuel, former Commanders head coach Ron Rivera, and former Jets head coach Rex Ryan. The Cowboys rejected a couple of Dan Quinn's interview requests. Less than a week after former Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn was officially named the Washington Commanders head coach, he has requested multiple interviews with coaches from his former team. Cowboys defensive backs coach Al Harris and tight ends coach Lunda Wells were requested for interview by Washington, which Dallas has rejected, according to ESPN's Todd Archer. Harris has been Dallas defensive backs coach since 2020. The former cornerback and 2-time Pro Bowler played in the NFL from 1997 to 2011 before coaching stints with the Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs, Florida Atlantic University, and now the Cowboys. Wells has also had his role since 2020. The tight ends coach was with the New York Giants from 2012 to 2019, in multiple roles. Archer also reported that the Cowboys did give permission to a couple of their staffers to interview with the Commanders. Assistant defensive line coach Sharif Floyd and quality control coach/defensive assistant Pete Onigian. Floyd is in his first season coaching. He's a former 5-star recruit and All-American at the University of Florida. He was drafted 23rd overall by the Minnesota Vikings and played there from 2013 to 2017. Onigian is also in his first season coaching after 2 years scouting for the NFL. Quinn already named former Cowboys secondary coach and defensive passing game coordinator Joe Witt as his defensive coordinator. Witt was set to interview for the Cowboys' defensive coordinator vacancy before accepting the job under Quinn. Witt had the same role with the Cowboys as he did with the Atlanta Falcons in 2020 when Quinn was the head coach there. Cowboys urged to add 21 TDRB despite Tony Pollard uncertainty. The Dallas Cowboys have plenty of areas to address this offseason, and the most important of which may be running back. Dallas is potentially losing 2 running backs to free agency, which is why the team is being linked to Ray Davis in the 2024 NFL Draft. The Kentucky RB is coming off an exceptional showing at the Senior Bowl. After his display, Bleacher Report's Christopher Knox believes the Cowboys have to consider drafting him whether or not Tony Pollard returns. Dallas doesn't necessarily have to swing at the position early, though, as teams frequently uncover starting caliber backs later in the draft. Following a strong week of Senior Bowl practices, Kentucky's Ray Davis is a prospect Dallas must track. The 5'8", 220-pound Davis is a compact runner who can get tough yards between the tackles. Immobile, though, he also showed that he can be a playmaker in the receiving game, Knox wrote on February 5. Dallas has devoted significant resources to the running back position over the past decade. It centers around the team drafting Ezekiel Elliott at 4th overall, and then paying him a huge contract. Now, they have a chance to move on from that approach in the draft. Pollard's future is undecided, but Davis appears like a strong addition regardless. Davis impresses ahead of NFL draft. Davis is an example of the modern-day college career. He transferred 3 times over 5 years of eligibility, going from Temple to Vanderbilt to Kentucky. Each move marked a step up in expectation and surrounding talent, and it's safe to say he improved accordingly. After an impressive start at Temple, Davis joined the Commodores in the 2021 offseason. After a bit-part role that year, Davis then exploded for 1,042 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns in 2022, according to Sports Reference. Davis then transferred to Kentucky, where he put together a monstrous season. Davis racked up 1,129 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, and averaged 5.7 yards per carry. As Knox alluded, he also showed his abilities as a receiver with 33 catches for 323 yards and 7 more touchdowns. Cowboys coaching change didn't reach Tony Pollard. In a recent appearance on ESPN's The Pat McAfee Show, Pollard received some news. As it turns out, when McAfee asked Pollard about former Cowboys DC Dan Quinn leaving for the Washington Commanders, that was the moment the RB first heard of Quinn's departure. "You know what's crazy? I just found out right now," Pollard explained on February 7. "See, I haven't been on social media. I got rid of Instagram like midway through the season. Being a Cowboy, you just have to find ways to keep your mental on point. I just found out right now." That's an understandable approach, but it's still wild that Pollard was not informed. Quinn was hired on February 1, so nearly a whole week had passed before Pollard finally got the update. And you, fan, what do you think about the situation of Ray Davis? Leave your opinion in the comments.